All right, so to begin, how many of you like to eat foods like hamburger, steak, carne guisada, tacos, beef? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right, good. Now, if I were to hand you one of these said foods right now, would you still eat it if you knew the meat didn't come from a cow? Good afternoon, my name is Valerie Lantigua, and today I'd like to share my research on cultured meat and its viability as a consumer product. So, one of the first things I wanted to go over is that this idea isn't all that new. In fact, the idea of growing meat outside of a living animal has been in the scientific community for over a century. Starting in 1912, biologist Alexis Carrel, right here, kept a chicken's heart beating in a nutrient bath for more than 20 years. Winston Churchill, in 1931, wrote a predictive essay optimistically titled 50 Years Hence, and he said that we shall escape the absurdity of growing a whole chicken in order to eat the breast or the wing by growing these parts separately under a suitable medium. Unfortunately, during this time period, of course, the technology didn't exist, but since the advent of modern medicine and stem cell therapy and things of that nature, we've been able to start developing this type of meat since the early 2000s. So, what is cultured meat? Cultured meat, also known as in vitro meat or cellular agriculture, is defined as meat grown in a cell culture instead of inside of animals. Biologically, it's exactly the same as the tissue that comes from the animal. To give you a simplified explanation of the in vitro meat production, first, a tissue sample is harvested from a live animal. From this sample, myosatellite cells, a form of stem cell, are extracted, and then they are placed in a growth medium that contains essential growth factors for replication. At the moment, the most widely used growth medium is bovine fetal serum, which is harvested from the fetuses of pregnant cows during slaughter. Unfortunately, there are a couple of cons to this growth medium that prevent cultured meat from becoming a thing. The first of which is there is a widespread ethical concern on the product, as the fetuses are alive for the entire process. Another is that the batches vary considerably in their composition, as being that these are cows that come from different regions, different environments, and are in different diets, it's not going to be the same serum every single time. Another is that it introduces the threat of pathogen introduction. It's just another avenue that the final product could be tainted with something that could hurt the consumer. One of which could, even though unlikely, could be mad cow disease because serum can transfer the disease. Another is that it's cost prohibitive. This product is mostly a byproduct of the dairy industry and isn't something that is harvested in very, very large amounts and is very expensive to use on a large basis. And of course, the last is that it defeats the purpose of cultured meat. You're still slaughtering a cow at the end of the day to get meat. The good news is there is current research to find growth mediums derived from other sources such as transgenic yeast, mushrooms, and algae, just to name a few. As you can probably gather, this product is not vegan or vegetarian by any sense of the matter. To give you an example, one of the large companies that are contenders in this market, Memphis Meats, their chief executive, Uma Valetti, states, "Some folks who are otherwise vegetarian might still eat our products, but we are making products for meat eaters." So that just increases the emphasis on making a product that's authentic, that tastes, looks, and feels like real meat. All right, so we know that we can make it. But what are the real benefits? Well, to start off, there's the health benefit, as the nutritional composition can actually be altered to make the product healthier, such as the reduction or complete removal of harmful cholesterol and saturated fats, which, as you can see here, are major contributors to death worldwide. The top two. Another is the efficiency and reduction of land use, as the world faces critical food shortages in the near future. The World Health Organization expects meat consumption to double by the year 2050. Livestock production uses 70% of our arable land worldwide, and a third of the world's grain production is used to produce livestock feed. In the United States, This figure is a little bit more extreme, as 64% of cropland is used to produce livestock feed. Cultured meat would allow this land to be used for crops to feed people, on less than 1% of the current land use. Researchers estimate that cultured meat can also be produced at a much faster rate, with the equivalent of one cow being produced in a month on one individual unit. And the big one that gets touted by these companies the most are the environmental benefits. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, livestock represent 15% of man-made greenhouse gas emissions. 65% of this said 15% are directly related to cattle, both beef and dairy production, along with the byproducts of these industries, which is why there is such an extreme focus on producing a beef alternative. Uma Valeti of Memphis Meats also states, "We aim to produce meat that requires 96% less greenhouse gas emissions, 96% less water, and 99% less land than conventionally produced meat." A 2011 study by scientists at Oxford University and the University of Amsterdam support that these claims are indeed possible under a model. All right, so how viable is cultured meat as a consumer product? Ryan Mandelbaum, in his article assessing the current status of cultured meat, states it perfectly. He says, "Cultured meat is still in its research and development phase and must overcome massive hurdles before hitting the market. A consumer-ready product does not yet exist, and its progress is heavily shrouded by intellectual property claims and sensationalist press." But what he means by the intellectual property claims is, even though there are several businesses who are putting their foot into the pie or whatever, they don't really share their ideas because they're companies that want to protect their ideas. So progress is going pretty slow as of right now. There are companies such as Hampton Creek and Memphis Meats that make bold claims as to when these products will be available to consumers, 2018 and 2021 respectively, but still have little to show in terms of progress. There are simply many unknowns when it comes to a product like this, as this has never been produced on a large scale before. Many of the figures and estimates that we have are based off of models that may not effectively replicate the real world. And of course, there's the public perception. There is a pronounced ick factor that comes with the idea of eating something as unnatural as a lab-grown piece of meat. And people are scared that it could harm them. I mean, there's very widespread fear of GMOs despite there being no published evidence to support the hypothesis that they are harmful. And finally, there's the cost. As with any new technology, the initial costs for implementation are steep. In 2013, the first cell-cultured hamburger was cooked and tasted live on air in London, England. This burger cost approximately $350,000 to produce due to being produced on the laboratory scale, the salaries of the technicians that worked on this, and the consumption of expensive laboratory supplies. This burger was not perfect. It was pure muscle and lacked the blood and fat that make meat taste the way it does. The leader of this project, Professor Mark Post, that's him right there, stated in 2015 that the cost was now closer to $11 per burger for their laboratory. But they believe that someday we would likely achieve competitive, if not cheaper, prices to currently available meat. So overall, cultured meat may someday prove to be a viable alternative to traditionally grown meat, but will not likely be consumed on a large scale for years to come. I hope that I was able to shed some light on cultured meat and where it's at today.